And our meeting tonight is now open for sharing testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
Tonight, I would like to give gratitude for all I have been taught here in Plainfield about Christian Science. On page 494 of Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, quote, "Divine love always has met and always will meet every human need," unquote. And thinking about that, I can't help but see how true that statement is every day. Whether it presents as needing to learn something to enable a new feature on the website, or for God to give me the time and ability to complete my daily tasks, or even if it is to be given the words necessary to email a member of the church, it is now plainly obvious that God is always providing. I'm so grateful for how my practitioner has shown me to start the day imbibing only truth and expecting only good, to always be on the lookout for an opportunity to bless others, and to always be ready for inspiration to guide and govern me. What all this has enabled in my life is far beyond what I ever thought possible. I'm so grateful to be able to prove each day how effective this science is in every facet of my life. God truly is good. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for a wonderful healing I had this weekend. For the past week and a half, I had intense pain in my hips and joints to such a degree that I was hobbling when I walked and had trouble climbing the stairs at home. I called a practitioner here and asked for prayerful help. She told me to continue to work daily with the definition of God in Science and Health, knowing that God is all action, governing all my action and all my activity. She gave me statements in Science and Health from the lesson to work with, especially, quote, "The intercommunication is always from God to his idea, man," end quote, and, quote, "Truth communicates itself, but never imparts error," end quote. The next day, I still needed more help, so I asked the practitioner to continue the prayer. She agreed and with much love told me to lean on God. I was so comforted by that statement and also by the fact that the practitioner was continuing the work. The following morning, I awoke with such a clear sense that this pain was not in my body, but was an imposition on my thought. I saw that I was unconsciously accepting the mental and verbal suggestions around me of age and joint replacement. When I realized that these were only mental impositions, all pain in my body was gone. That day I was able to clean the bathroom, mop both the bathroom and kitchen floors, and stand up during the day cooking without any aches or pain. When I told the practitioner of the healing, she rejoiced and said she had been praying for me throughout the weekend. This was a wonderful physical healing, but it was also a much-needed lesson for me to be more conscientious in protecting my thought and to know that those aggressive suggestions are not true for anyone, anywhere. I am so grateful for the practitioner's persistent and loving help and for this wonderful Christian Science. And I am so happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen from California, go ahead.
Good evening. I am so grateful for our church's website and how this past Christmas season, it offered so much in the way of inspiring articles, the lesson sermon, the candlelight service, and of course, the Wednesday service on Christmas. I was away from home for the first time on Christmas. My husband and myself and my daughter had gone to Georgia to be with my family. My son and his family, including my grandchildren, do not talk about God. Christmas is strictly about Santa Claus, and all gifts come from him. I was wondering whether I had made a mistake in deciding to be there, but I so wanted to be with all my family and especially see my grandchildren. My practitioner reminded me that I was taking the presence of the Christ and that would have sovereignty. Everyone was staying at my son and daughter-in-law's house, but my husband and I were staying in a home all to ourselves in a very quiet neighborhood nearby. I have never before had such an inspiring Christmas week as I did that week. Every day before going over to see the family, I was able to spend quiet time declaring what was true about this season and reading articles and especially the lesson. I affirmed that mortal mind and its seeming distractions could not overpower the presence of the Christ truth. I also was praying for an opportunity to talk to my granddaughter about God, but knew I must leave that desire in God's hands. And if that moment were to happen, it would be God opening the way, and he would prepare the thought to receive his message. The first day we were with the family, my granddaughter wanted to read to me. So we went to her room where it was quiet, and she read a book about good manners. One of the good manners mentioned was gratitude. I asked her what she is grateful for and who she is grateful to. She said, with a big smile on her face, that she was grateful to God and that she prayed to God for her parents, her brother, her school, friends, etc. I was so grateful to hear this. I told her that the term God is really a term for good. She said, again with a big smile and with so much joy, so if you put another O in the word God, you have good. Well, that makes sense. I had my answer as to why I was in Georgia for Christmas. The 10 days that we were there were so harmonious. And despite the Santa Claus emphasis, I knew that the real reason for this season, as Mrs. Eddy says in Miscellany, was to commemorate the entrance into human understanding of the Christ, the birth of truth, the dawn of divine love, breaking upon the gloom of matter and evil with the glory of infinite being, and, quote, God's great gift, unquote. I was there to let the light of this truth shine as best I could, knowing that nothing could interfere with it, not even what others thought about this season. As it turns out, living in the Bible Belt, she is hearing about God from her friends and teacher. Sometimes one can feel that because they are in the company of like-minded people, they don't have to work so hard to keep their thought at one with God. But when in situations like I was in at Christmas, it furnished me the opportunity to confirm that the Christ is here and is finding entrance into the hearts and homes of all mankind. And what better way than through the innocence of a child? I can't say enough about our church's website. It provides a wonderful way to share our growth, our inspiration with the world, not to mention the inspiration and the learning I am receiving from it. I am so grateful to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave from Florida, go ahead.
Hi. I'd like to express gratitude for a healing I had when I was a kid in kindergarten. I was at the school and I took a fall which broke my right arm. Needless to say, I was in a lot of pain and the school called my parents. my father came and took me to the local doctor. This course he did mainly so the school would know he'd taken what they considered appropriate steps. Anyway, he had already called our practitioner and asked for help. The pain had stopped very quickly. And then I remember that the doctor x-rayed my arm and was amazed. The bone was set perfectly. This was definitely the result of the prayer of the practitioner. Still, he wanted to put my arm in a cast, but my father said, no, just wrap it in an ace bandage. This was done, and they put my arm in a sling. In a couple weeks, we went back, had it x-rayed again, and once again the doctor was amazed. My arm was perfectly healed, and he said you couldn't even tell that it had been broken. This was really proof of God's healing power that extends to even broken bones, everything. I'm very grateful for Christian Science, for this church, and for the healing practitioners that I have had over the years as well as now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Luann from New York. Go ahead.
Thank you. Over the summer, we had hired a guy to replace the roof on our rental house. After a week, it became very apparent that this guy did not know how to do the job correctly. After a few battles with him, it became necessary to take him to court to try to get the money back that we had paid him to get started on the job. I contacted my practitioner about the situation. He assured me that my defense is of God, which saveth the upright in heart, from Psalm 7. He continued with a passage from Isaiah 33, which reads, the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king. He will save us. As I worked with this, I felt very encouraged, and without a lawyer, I was able to present my case in court. After a month, we finally got the verdict back, which stated that we failed to prove our case. I became very angry and assumed that meant we had to pay him the additional money owed him had he completed the job correctly. Feeling very much like a victim, I found the work difficult, having to remove the entire roofing and replace it properly. I made such a fool of myself, voicing my anger about the situation to anyone within earshot. Another month passed, and I continued to be in turmoil. I wanted so much to trust God, but I had doubts. I prayed every night, working with the watches about justice, trying to mentally process what went wrong instead of focusing on what is right and true. Finally, I got myself out of the way and asked God to help me see the truth. The next day, we were getting ready to write out a check to pay this guy. Still feeling confused, I reread the letter from the court. Included in the envelope, which I failed to see, was the verdict for his counterclaim, which stated that he had failed to prove his claim as well, which meant that we did not owe him any more money. I had been so determined that I was a victim, that there was no justice, that I was blind to what was right there in front of me the whole time. Losing my case does not make me a victim. It makes me more aware that I need to trust God fully when making decisions. God did judge rightly, and more so, God is working in my life to raise me out of my personal sense of self and pride. He provides the courage and sees it through to the very end. I'm so grateful to Mrs. Eddy for this working science and for my practitioner, who continues to work with me on each false claim until I'm able to realize the allness of God. I'm so grateful for everything I've been given, and I'm so happy to be a member of this church. Thank you.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio. Go ahead.
With the beginning of a new year, I'm reflecting on how much I have gained since coming to Plainfield. I'm grateful for the better understanding of true Christian Science through our weekly lessons, the Bible studies, the roundtable discussions, and much more. I cannot say enough for my wonderful practitioner where so much learning and healing has occurred. Since seeing the world through this perspective has been changing my life, I'm so grateful to God for all this. Thank you so much for tonight's reading, and I'm so very happy to be here this evening.
Thank you. Debbie from Illinois. Go ahead.
Good evening. On January 4th, our daily calendar message read, "Are you listening, God? Please tell me what to do." Then came the gentle answer, "I'm listening, child, are you?" I was had a lot of joy reading that message in the morning, and I went about my day very much feeling that it was directed by God in every action. The next task I needed to complete was to go outside and replace the battery in my garage door keypad because it hadn't been working properly. I went outside and I replaced the battery and I entered the garage code and the door came down, and I was very grateful, assuming that the task had been completed. I went to put the keypad code in again and the garage door didn't go up. I entered it several more times, and again, the garage door didn't go up. I walked to my front door and found that my screen door was locked, and I did not have a key to the screen door. Therefore, I was locked out of my home. I felt the frustration starting to raise, and I just said, "Why am I going through this, God?" I waited a moment and I listened. And the response I heard from God was, "Well, you need to put a screen door key with your other key so that you'll never be able to be locked out of your house again." And I said, "Okay, I listen. I hear you. Thank you." I went back to the garage door keypad. I entered the code, and yes, the garage door opened. I was so extremely grateful that I did not allow the anxiety and pressure just to take me to think that I was locked out of the house, that I was able to be quiet and listen for God's answer. After I went through that situation, I'm now learning, and I'm very grateful that every time mortal mind tries to present a situation that is not good, I can sit back and ask, "Why am I going through this?" and quiet myself and listen for the still small voice. I'm very grateful for being a member of this church and all that is offered, and thank you very much for all the testimonies this evening.
Thank you. This is Bruce. I'd like to share something that happened to me last week that I thought was just wonderful proof of God's ability to do good things. My wife and I were in a busy city and actually in a foreign country, and to visit and do some things with our son and our daughter-in-law. And they came by and picked us up in an Uber car, and we were traveling through the city, and the Uber car dropped us off at our destination. And we went into the barber shop there to have a haircut. And my son realized that his cell phone fell out of his pocket and was still in the Uber car. Well, the thing is with these cell phones, they're like mini computers. They've got all kinds of private and sensitive information besides your email conversations and your text messages. It also had the contact information for this particular Uber driver. And we were wondering, how are we going to get this phone back? Because we didn't know who to call or how to contact him. But I just thought, God can do wonderful things. Where's God in this picture? And the thing that came to me was the words from the song that we had sung here in church some time ago that goes like this: God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. And with that, I was at peace. And I looked over at our son while he was getting a haircut, and he was at peace as well. And I looked at our daughter-in-law. She was just as happy as she always is. And she was making a bunch of phone calls to various people and finally found a way to contact the Uber company and to contact the specific driver that drove us. And then later, our son and our daughter-in-law went to his private residence to pick up his telephone. Thank you, Father. Well, that's all I could say was just thank you, Father, because he most certainly did make a way where it didn't look like there was a way, but there was with him. So we're just so grateful because God most certainly is able. Mike from New York, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the wonderful readings tonight, the uplifting testimonies, and the beautiful music. A number of years ago, my wife acquired a new puppy. Since I have no objection to animals as long as they are civilized, I decided to apply my love for Christian Science to the best of my ability in raising and training her. Due to this, thankfully, this puppy grew up as a very polite and loving being. She also loves Christian Science, rarely missing any of my attendance to Plainfield services and classes. There was a belief of health issue with her that I had worked on to eliminate for a while, and finally I decided it was time to enlist the help of my Plainfield practitioner, so I gave her a call. I was reminded of some things to work with, such as all-in-allness of God being the major one, and get any personal sense out of the way, which is a very important one. Shortly after hanging up the phone, the dog came over and emphatically started licking my hand. As a matter of fact, throughout the day, she licked me every time I came within tongue's reach of her. Though she is truly loving, this was even beyond her norm, and I knew she was feeling with gratitude the healing power of God and the practitioner's help, and thanking me for having made the call. I'm, of course, most grateful that through the day the belief of the dog having something apart from God dissipated. But even more, I was so grateful to see the acknowledgement, understanding, and gratitude that she displayed for our God and the Christian Science work of Christ Jesus, Mary Baker Eddy, and our Plainfield practitioner. I'm so grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Craig.
Thank you. And thank you, Florence, for those readings. Man, meekness is such a beautiful and important quality. And I realized, experienced the last couple of years that meekness can't be warred against either, and it cannot be misunderstood. As a parent, there's always something that you have to, so often things you have to guide your children with. And I have a 18-year-old, but I don't want to be bossy, but I want to be meek and mighty. Well, I asked for support of Practitioners Church, and has been explaining to me how they are the children of God, and they are attracted to the things of God and to doing the things, the good that God would have them to do, recognizing where the good comes from, and that we could never lose them or lose their attraction to in the right things. And it has helped me so much. She gave me hymn 56 from our hymnal to work with. So many things are in the world that they see, and they would like to draw them away, but still, there is God, and something which is their love for God is natural and is so much greater than any of those suggestions or pulls. And I'm finding that in thinking about this, praying about this, my son and I have a better communication. I went to him and I spoke in meekness, but with principle and love. And he said, "Why are you yelling at me?" And I wasn't. I was just speaking with principle and love. And I said, "No, I'm not yelling at you. I'm just talking to you kindly and quietly." And immediately he realized that I was talking to him kindly and quietly and lovingly. And he said, "Okay." And he went right about to do what he needed to do. It just showed that meekness can't be misunderstood, for long at least. Whereas humanly, when someone says something to another, it might come out as being combative, but you can't misunderstand, principle of love. And our children have a natural attraction to what is right. I thank God for helping me, for a practitioner, to be a patient and loving parent and maintain a right temper so that all things work together for good, for His sake. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the hymns and the readings tonight. I want to express my gratitude for the Unity Watches and Plainfield Practitioner Prayers and Teachings that is helping me learn about effective prayer. One day after talking with my practitioner, during the time I was talking to her, I mentioned that there were many ambulance and fire trucks that raced down our main road right by my house during the day. And rest of that day and the next day, not one car went by. And I knew she had been praying, but it was really a deep lesson to me that I needed to get on this myself and pray more assiduously and clearly about this situation, because I had almost gotten so I was used to it rather than standing up to it. Although I had tried, I had worked with some prayers, I knew I needed to do more. And it was such a beautiful lesson to me to see that power of prayer. And some of the things that we were taught here was to affirm that there are no fires in divine mind, no accidents in divine mind, and affirm God good. And there were also many other prayers that I would throw in once in a while, depending on what I felt inspired, needed at the time. But definitely these. And the trucks did come back, but not like they were. But as I started working more on this and even proactively, it wasn't that long ago I realized that the amount of trucks has really dramatically dropped, or even ambulances. And I know it's because of this prayer, and I'm going to keep at it because it's so important to do this for our world. And I'm so grateful to be here learning these truths. And there's so much joy and peace and strength that comes when you pray for your community. And I'm so grateful to be learning to pray for my home, for my neighborhood, and the community and our nation. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight. I'm very grateful for Christ Jesus' teaching and all that Mary Baker Eddy went through to give us this science in this precious church. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening, and the readings are wonderful about meekness and might. A while back, I became aware of an itchy, scabby patch on the top of, right near my shoulder on the back. At first I thought, why this? But I quickly went to work, thinking about what Mrs. Eddy said about having dominion and how she worked with her people, her students in her home. And she used weather. I think I've talked about this before, but she used weather to teach them. And that you take God's dominion and you work with that, knowing that He only gives us what is good for us. So I work with that, and also with many things my practitioner has taught me. One of them is to work with this aging idea. And there's one little quote from Age by Mary Baker Eddy, I like especially. I do now and ever must manifest the God life shining in me in every part, to will and to do. Then last week, I noticed that the patch was totally gone. I am very grateful for this seemingly little healing because it helps me to understand who we really are, and our self is governed under God's government, reflecting Him and only Him, and also learning about praying for myself. I am so grateful to God for His loving kindness and my practitioners' prayers and teaching to bring me and everyone closer to God. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for all that I've learned through Christian Science, but most particularly for learning what the true meaning of meekness is. It has changed my life. For so many years, I struggled. And even when I started to study science, I was still in between. I was trying to do something instead of letting God, knowing the truth in my heart and letting that truth, God, work. Until I learned that meekness, what Mrs. Eddy talks about, is needed. Without it, we are not doing science. And she says that because is that yielding, the willingness to make God all, to follow completely. And somebody gave an example of how water takes the form of everything or anything that it is poured into. In other words, complete absence of resistance. And I learned this, and practicing it, it healed my fears. I finally said, Father, here I am, whatever you want me to do. And I know that that's when my fears started to abate. And with that foundation, I've also learned to claim that I am the likeness and image and likeness of God, that I am nothing of myself. And that really gives me strength. It makes me know that whatever comes my way, because of that presence of God, there is victory if I stay persistent and patient in my practice. It is so wonderful to be free of fear, to know that at all times, no matter what comes up, myself, as Florence, out of the way, the truth does the work. I cannot thank God enough. I cannot thank Mrs. Eddy enough. And I'm so grateful for all the articles that help and continue to help everyone who is willing to come to it empty and be filled and take self out of the way and be blessed by the peace that only God can give. Thank you for all the testimonies. I'm very grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
A few things to read this evening. The first from our church website, Bulletin Board, Virginia. What a perfect service to begin the new year. That was last Wednesday. The readings were inspirational, the hymns meaningful, and each and every testimony was all of that and instructional too. Many thanks to all that served and shared. And then from Connecticut, a visitor new to our church who visited our church on Sunday. Thank you and all the members so much for being so welcoming today. I really enjoyed the round table and the service. Most of all, I like the love and joy throughout. Your church is special. Much gratitude and love to all. We were so glad she came and visited us. And then California. I just finished translating the lesson for the week of January 19th into Spanish. What a blessing this lesson is. Everyone who reads it or listens to it is in for a lovely treat. Thank you so much for this lesson. Plainfield is feeding us with the absolute best, After all, as it's written in Deuteronomy and Matthew, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that comes out of the mouth of God. Thank you so much for those who do the lessons and everyone involved making sure that they are available for us. And then Maine, to the Plainfield Church, enclosed is a check with love and gratitude for all the good that you do. Thank you. And then Vermont, dearest friends, what an inspiring year it has been at the Plainfield Church. I cannot be thankful enough for the way the Plainfield Church has transformed my life and set me straight by introducing me to Mary Baker Eddy's Pure Christian Science. I had grown up in Christian Science, but things had not been working out that well for me. It was not until stepping into the Plainfield Church for the first time that the veil was lifted. I literally felt it peel away. Everything started to become clear. My life started to transform. It took several years, but things radically changed for the better as I learned the lesson of obedience. Now I relish the straight and narrow way. I used to do my best to avoid my misconception of it, but now it's exactly where I want to be. Every week, I truly appreciate receiving what I consider to be the equivalent of class instruction through the roundtable discussions and Bible studies. Participation on the forum allows a deeper and shared understanding of the weekly Bible lessons, and the church services are a sacred time of uplift and outreach to the world, with beautiful readings, testimonies, and music. Thank you to the devoted practitioners and fellow members of the Plainfield Church for all that you do to promote true Christian Science to the entire world in what is now a multitude of languages. Please find enclosed a heartfelt contribution in support of this wonderful church. And then Virginia. Dear fellow members, enclosed, please find my monthly contribution to support and further the work of the Independent Christian Science Church. With all the growth and interest and support worldwide, I look forward to participating in and sharing manifold blessings in the new year. With love and gratitude. And then this is an email from Sweden. I very much enjoy your beautiful webpage and online tools, and he starts it with, Dear Independent Fellow Scientists, I very much enjoy your beautiful webpage and online tools. The uplifting songs give me new hope in those crisis-ridden times. Dear ones, you give me so much simply by being out there and doing prayer work for the final acceptance of universal Christian Science. I pray with you. Sincerely yours in Christ. Sweden, that's wonderful. We get a new country every week, if not more. Thank you so much tonight for the beautiful readings. How important it is we understand the true meaning of meekness, that it is a strength and a power. It's not weakness, but a strength. I was thinking recently about Mrs. Eddy's beautiful hymns and how healing they are. And a while ago, I'd found a short article in the book. It's called The Healer. It's about Mrs. Eddy, and the stories are compiled by David Keaston. And in that book is a short story, a true story of how Mrs. Eddy had actually used the hymn Blessed Christmas Morn in healing. Of course, we know the strength and the beauty of the words of the hymns that she wrote. This article can also be found in our November 2015 magazine. But Mrs. Eddy says about how she used her own interpretation of Christmas morn in healing a patient. Thou gentle beam of living love and deathless life, truth infinite is you as God sees you, as you see yourself. And still I quote our leader, I have taken this hymn and raised a patient who was at the point of passing on in the hospital. I held her as a gentle beam of what? Living love. As far above all the strife, all the striving, as far above the conditions that brought her there. Or cruel creed, the doctor's verdict, so far above all cruel edicts, creeds of mortal belief. Or earth-born taint, so far above any taint of inheritance. Fill us, fill her today, right now, with all thou art. With what? With living love and deathless life, truth infinite. Thou all of me, fill us, be thou our all of life, always. I'm not sure I've ever read anything more beautiful than that treatment. Of course, those of you who know that hymn, Bless Christmas Morn, know the words that she refers to. But you see what a complete treatment that was, to lift thought above the striving that brought a person into a situation, to take them above the earth-born taint, any belief of inheritance, to know that they are a beam of living love and deathless life. It is so beautiful, and I say I have used it so often in sometimes very severe cases, and always with wonderful results, because this is the truth, as our leader would teach us. I'm so grateful to dear Mrs. Eddy for all that she's given us, and certainly for these most beautiful hymns. I'm grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you.